With Emily Dickinson's poetry, it can sometimes be difficult to really find purchase, to get your fingers in there, get a move on those words, and start digging. So, a lot of the times when people ask me, how do I get more interested into Emily Dickinson? How do I find Emily Dickinson? My suggestion is to just sort of pick up Emily. First off, don't bother with compilations, right? Don't bother with Emily Dickinson's 100 greatest poems. Don't bother with those. Get the whole shebang. Get Emily Dickinson's entire works. Now, I normally link that in the, I think it's in the description. Sometimes I get commission if you buy that. I don't think it's always the case that I do. Um, but what you want to do, and I don't take my word for that. Maybe it does. I just don't notice. But what the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to buy that book, open it up, and just go to town. Flip around, and eventually you will find something that connects with you. For me, my introduction to Emily Dickinson was I Died for Beauty. I died for beauty, but was scarce adjusted in the tomb, etc. That was that was all it took for me. It was right in here, and I was done. This, the poem for today, if you were coming in the fall, was my second Emily Dickinson poem, the second Emily Dickinson poem with which I really connected. Um, I was not, I struggled with reading for a large portion of my life. And if you struggle with reading, Emily Dickinson might not be a great place to start, right? I think you can recognize that. We're here, we're adults. Emily Dickinson can be very, very challenging. This poem, however, is very simply written. However, that does not mean that it is a simple poem. I would venture to wager, if you were to print this poem out, go down to your local library and slip this into the most often checked out collection of John Donne poems, because John Donne poems get a lot of traffic, right? And so do your public libraries, I'm sure. I think it would be years before anyone realized that was not a John Donne poem. This poem is clearly, in my opinion, inspired by John Donne. However, in my estimation, this poem shows much more imagination, much more powers of imagination than anything I've ever read from John Donne. This is not to say that John Donne was amateurish. It's only to say that I think if this poem were in fact inspired by John Donne, it was not just an inspired by John Donne, it was building upon John Donne. These conceits that time can just be crumpled, that time can just be done away with, that time itself can be sort of manipulated by the person experiencing the time. Wah wah wooey, I don't think there's anything. John Donne was a powerful writer. I don't think he did anything quite so powerful as this, taking one of the core conceits of the entire universe, that time exists, and saying, yeah, but I bet I can mess with it. Now, if you have spent any period of time in this series, Echoes of Emily, here on the channel, you may have, if you stuck around on the videos long enough, may have realized that what I'm doing here is giving an intro, giving a reading, giving a few talking points, an interpretation, a discussion on the poem itself, and then at the end of the video, there is a reading again, but it is accompanied by AI-generated images. I plug the poem into DALL-E from ChatGPT, and I just sort of put those images over the reading of the poem because it's kind of interesting to do. I don't know what was going on with this poem, but for some reason, first-person point of view was all the rage with this poem. I picked 3 of the best that I thought were most interesting, and I also picked a couple that were really out of left field as far as the other interpretations by Dali were concerned. Very colorful, these other interpretations, but still, I don't know where they came from. For this poem, I have 3 talking points. This video is part of 3 separate playlists here on the channel. Number 1 being obviously the Echoes of Emily playlist, but number 2 being a playlist of Emily Dickinson poetry discussions, and third, the general playlist for poetry discussions. If you like or appreciate the work that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing that I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. So consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more literature in the future. If you were coming in the fall, I'd brush the summer by with half a smile and half a spurn, as housewives do a fly. If I could see you in a year, I'd wind the months in balls and put them each in separate drawers for fear the numbers fuse. If only centuries delayed, I'd count them on my hand, subtracting till my fingers dropped into Van Diemen's land. If certain, when this life was out, that yours and mine should be, I'd toss it yonder like a rind and take eternity. But now, uncertain of the length of this that is between, it goads me like the goblin bee that will not state its sting. So again, 3 talking points here, but though the poem is written fairly straightforward, let's just go through it. If you were coming in the fall, I'd brush the summer by with half a smile and half a spurn, as housewives do a fly. If you were coming, so in the fall, means that we're getting this poem in the winter, spring, or summer, right? So we're getting this poem before this happens in the year, before fall happens in the year. If it were just that short a time, I'd just swipe the time away so that I could see you. If you were coming in a year, I would wind the months in balls like socks, and I would put them in the drawers for fears that number would fuse, because if that number fused, then I have to wait longer. If only centuries delayed, I'd count them on my hand, subtracting till my fingers dropped into Van Diemen's Land. Van Diemen's Land is an archaic term for like Tasmania. Now, what this means exactly, I believe, don't quote me on this because I am no history on Tasmania. I believe that in this time, Tasmania was just seen as sort of the rugged outback is basically how it was seen. So you're willing to cast that time away as your fingers just boom, put them, I don't care, put them in Tasmania. Something will find him and have a heyday. If certain when this life was out, if I knew when I died that we would be together, I would toss my life aside like a rind of an orange. You don't need that part. It's the juicy stuff inside that you eat. I would choose that part and take eternity. But now, uncertain of the length of this that is between, it goads me like the goblin bee that will not state its sting. I don't know when you and I are going to be together, baby. So, the thought of it is like a bee sting. That bee is just buzzing around, and I have no idea when it's going to sting me. An interesting set of visuals, but nonetheless, We do get, I believe this is the first time we get in this series, Emily Dickinson's love for bees. So take that for what you will. The 3 talking points I have. Number 1, what a lovey-dovey poem, right? Isn't this so sweet? I would brush the summer by in order to get to you. If we're here in the spring with all the darling buds of spring about to sprung, I'd get rid of it all just to see you. But is it such a lovey-dovey poem? Now don't tell me this. If you were coming in the fall, how, oh how, am I going to make If You Were Coming in the Fall into a dark and brooding poem? Well, it's easy, really. Don't look at what the poem is saying, look at what it's not saying. If you were coming in the fall, I'd brush the summer by with half a smile and half a spurn as housewives do a fly. That's what's said. We can take the Jacques Derrida approach and say, okay, we say everything that's here, we also imply its inverse. You, the you in question, are not here. You're not here. Why not? Is this a love which is unrequited? Is our speaker talking to someone that is not only absent, but someone who will in fact not be there? If I could see you in a year, I'd wind the months in balls and put them each in separate drawers for fear the numbers fuse. This is the same sentiment. There's no real reason to assume any further from in the second stanza than from the first stanza that this is unrequited love. Now, is there? If I could see you in a year, well, we're already talking about either spring or summer here. If I could see you in the fall, I'd brush the summer by, which insinuates that we're right before summer. Otherwise, our speaker would be brushing aside both the spring and the summer, or we're in the summer. I'd brush the rest of the summer by. A year is only 6 months longer that we're talking about. If centuries delayed, this states, well, golly, I really don't know how long it's going to be until I see you. It could be centuries. That's still maybe a little less promising than saying if you were here at the end of the year, you and I would be one, baby. It's a little bit different than that, but not entirely. It still suggests that this love is returned. If certain when this life was out, that yours and mine should be. But I'm not certain that when this life is out, yours and mine should be. But now, uncertain of the length of this that is between, it goads me like the goblin bee that will not state its sting. I don't know if you love me. I am uncertain that when I die, you and I will be together. But if I was, I'd end it all and take eternity. That's what that stanza right there is just clearly stating. But now, right now, I am uncertain of the time it will take not to have you, to win you, of this that is between. I don't know the time, I don't know the distance. It goads me, bothers me, like the goblin bee, like a bee that is just buzzing around but is threatening, that will not state its sting. This is saying, maybe not explicitly, Maybe it's still just implicitly, but it is stating, isn't it, that I don't know if I don't know that you and I will be together ever. I do not know if you love me now or if ever you will. On the exact opposite of that, we have an argument, a nihilistic argument for love. Let's see if I can go find that quote real quick. I've noted this quote in the past few videos because it is one of my favorite quotes ever, and it has to do with nihilism. This is Pisarev on nihilism. In short, here's the ultimatum of our camp. What can be smashed must be smashed. What will stand the blow will do. What flies into smithereens is rubbish. In any case, strike out right and left. No harm will or can come of it. If our speaker here has struck out right, has struck out left, in order to find those things that matter, in order to find the life's mission, in order to find what Nietzsche might call a created value, a value that is personable to the individual as opposed to a value that a religion or a society puts on us. If our speaker is stating that the you in question is that thing which will not blow to smithereens, our speaker has identified it and is pushing forward towards it. Our speaker has said, in the terms of strong nihilism, this is the good thing. I will have the good thing. And if not, I will wait. I will work. I will wait. And if I do not have the good thing, I will have no thing. Finally, hauntology. This is the anti-hauntological poem. Hauntology, or maybe that's not quite the right term. One of the things, basically the main premise of hauntology, is that our past is haunting us in the present moment because we do not know how to forge the future. We have classrooms that look basically the same as they always have, except there's a few more screens. We have cars that look as basically as they've always looked, except for some of them have batteries underneath them. The fashion that we wear is the same stuff. We just color it a little differently and say that now bell bottoms are back in. No, they're not. They don't look good. They've always looked dumb, but we can't figure out anything new to do with pants, so they keep recycling these. Movies. Everything that's in the theater is a remake or a sequel. Hauntology says that our past is haunting us with its very existence. Because it still exists, it is sort of haunting us. This poem strikes me as from whence hauntology springs. Our speaker here is talking about the fall, when it's only summer or spring. Existing in the fall, calling out forward to the fall. Our speaker is talking about calling out forward in ghastly fashion a year. Our speaker is talking about reaching out a century or more into the future and existing there, throwing away all of their life in this time in order to reach forward into centuries. Our speaker is saying, I don't know when this will be, but I'll throw the rest of this away. Our speaker here is suggesting that Everything is disposable in order to get to that future place. If everything in the present is disposable, you will not make it to that future place. You will not make it to that future place in whole. But maybe the apparitions of you will. Maybe this poem is from where something like hauntology springs. If you were coming in the fall, I'd brush the summer by with half a smile and half a spurn, as housewives do a fly. If I could see you in a year, I'd wind the months in balls and put them each in separate drawers for fear the numbers fuse. If only centuries delayed, I'd count them on my hand, subtracting till my fingers dropped into Van Diemen's land. If certain, when this life was out, that yours and mine should be, I'd toss it yonder like a rind and take eternity. But now, uncertain of the length of this that is between, it goads me like the goblin bee that will not state its sting.